Welcome back. Today we are making this sprinkle heart cake. So it's perfect for Valentine's Day. It's made with 3 6-inch funfetti cake layers. So these are smaller than my usual cake layers, and I actually just shared my small batch funfetti cake recipe on Chelsweets.com. So you can see they're nice and thick, they're about 1 inch tall, and I'm spreading an even layer of vanilla buttercream on top of each cake layer. I'm also adding some rainbow sprinkles in between the cake layers, just because this is funfetti, and you can never really have too many sprinkles, right? Once my 3 cake layers were stacked, I added a thin crumb coat all around the cake using both my large offset spatula and my bench scraper, just to make sure that all those sprinkles and crumbs stay in place to help us get a perfectly smooth second coat of frosting. Once I was happy with how smooth my crumb coat was, I chilled my cake in the freezer for about 10 minutes until the frosting was firm to the touch. Then I piped on a bunch of different shades of pink frosting. And coloring frosting can be a lot of work, so you definitely don't have to make this many shades. Believe it or not, I had all of this frosting left over from cake lessons, and I love repurposing leftover frosting and using it on future baking projects. I always try not to waste. So this was a great way for me to use a bunch of different shades and smooth them together to create kind of a fun, as I like to call it, rustic striped cake. So these are not the perfect buttercream stripes that I've made in the past with an icing comb. This technique kind of blends all the colors together and creates almost ombre stripes that kind of blend into one another. Once I was happy with my second layer of frosting, I used a square of parchment paper and I cut out a heart from the center of it just by folding it in half like this. So I like to call this the parchment paper stencil technique. I don't know if that's real or not, but that's what I like to call it. So I spread a tiny bit of white frosting in that opening, and then I carefully pressed sprinkles into it. I then gently peeled off the parchment paper and repeated this all the way around the cake. I made a few different sized heart-shaped stencils. I made some smaller ones and some bigger ones. And I also am adding that thin layer of frosting just to help the sprinkles stay in place and also to help them pop. I didn't want the pink sprinkles to get lost in the pink frosting, so I thought this helped them stand out a bit. If you have any areas where your stencil doesn't pull away cleanly, feel free to use an offset spatula to help clean up those lines. I also had to chill my cake throughout this process because the buttercream started to soften up, so don't be afraid to do that if you notice that your frosting is getting a tiny bit soft and sticky. To make the swirls on top of the cake, I wanted to swirl together my leftover frosting to make some pretty multicolored swirls. To do this, I used a bit of saran wrap or plastic wrap. I laid it down and piped some stripes with my leftover frosting. Once I had a bunch of different colors lined up, I rolled them together into kind of a sausage, for lack of a better way to describe that. I twisted the ends nice and tight, and then I snipped one of the ends before sliding this frosting sausage into my piping bag. I then kind of squeezed the frosting to let it spread out in my bag, and I'm doing this in a large frosting bag fit with a Wilton 1M tip. I then took my time piping some massive swirls on top of this cake. This is a little bit much in terms of how much frosting you'd actually want to eat, but I do like a lot of frosting and I also love the way it looks. You can definitely make smaller swirls if you want though. I then added one more little sprinkle of some nonpareils to the top just to finish off this cake. So now it's time to cut in and see our sprinkle-filled funfetti cake. And you can see we've got a perfect little slice there. This cake is made with 6-inch cake layers, so I like to say it feeds about 12 to 15 people. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you want to recreate this cake, the recipe is up on Chelsweets.com. Thanks for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you guys again soon.